So the second of our Japanese cars built in Britain is the Toyota Avensis. This car is built in Derbyshire, and since it was launched it's been very popular and sold well. Now for some people, having a car is merely a means of getting from A to B, doing it in comfort, making sure that the car is reliable. But that's not for everyone. Me, I prefer something with a bit more zip. When Toyota launched the Avensis back in 1998, they produced a very glitzy TV commercial, quite famous and quite unique. It showed the Avensis being driven around a large American city with the driver sat back here in the passenger seat as I am, and the car was driving itself. It was the Toyota Avensis, the car that drives itself. And it's actually quite roomy back here. It's a good size. You can have the Avensis in 4-door saloon like this, 5-door hatchback, or in estate form. Now obviously the Avensis doesn't drive itself, but the driving position is actually a very pleasant place to be. Inside you get, well, the usual Japanese foibles of masses and masses of grey plastic. There's an attempt at some luxury with some wood trim, but they're quite well spec'd, these cars. This is a 1.8 GLS, 4-door saloon. When this car was new, it would have cost around £16,500, but now with almost 40,000 miles on the clock, this would sell for about £6,500, which is cheap for an Avensis. The predecessor to the Toyota Avensis, the Carina, was one of those cars that sold in quite large numbers, particularly here in the UK, but was so bland and dull in its styling that you never really noticed the cars on the road. The Carina was pretty awful to drive, to be honest, whereas the Avensis, thankfully, is a lot better. I can remember driving this car 3 or 4 years ago when it first came out and being very uninspired by the way that it drove, but having spent some time with it today, I think I've revised my opinion slightly of it. It's not that bad. It's got a slick 5-speed gearbox, and the steering actually feels quite good and is sharp on the road. The Avensis has become very, very popular with people who are retired and perhaps getting a little older in life, because they want something that goes well, that's comfortable and that won't let them down, and that's inexpensive to run. These 1.8 petrol engines will astonishingly do around about 40 miles to the gallon. There is a diesel version of this car, but you don't get much better fuel economy, so you might as well go for the petrol option. One thing to watch with the Avensis is that you don't pay over the odds for a used car. Toyota were one of the few manufacturers who didn't cut list prices about a year ago when the other manufacturers were doing it. However, dealers are knocking chunks off the prices of new cars now, and that's had a knock-on effect into the used market. The earliest car we saw was an R-Edge with 60,000 miles on the clock, and you could pick that sort of car up for around £4,500. The Avensis might well be a slightly boring and uneventful car, but great reliability and build quality attract buyers to it. Good range of engines, including the 1.8 petrol we drove, which offers fantastic fuel economy. Plenty of space and a large boot add to the package. So, if I was buying either of these two cars, where would my money go? Well, it would go on this car, the Toyota Avensis. I think it's a better all-round package, despite the fact that this car has done a higher mileage.